What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. This is our prediction show where we try to break down what we think might happen as the Hounds return home to take on North Carolina for the second time this season. I am Mike Sparks. Joining me is Justin Ashcraft. Justin, you are going to be traveling in for this game. How are you feeling, man?
I'm excited to watch the soccer live. It's fun watching the Riverhounds on TV from the comfort of my couch. But it will be nice to watch them in the stadium and see what's happening live. And hopefully sit at the top of the Paul Child stand with Steve for a little while and watch the game. But we'll see. And then running the half marathon on Sunday, so I'm excited about that. Done the training that I can. So we'll see how the race goes, but I feel like, I did the work and we'll see how it goes once we get there.
What time are you supposed to arrive at the race on Sunday?
The race starts at 7 o'clock. So it's like they say basically anytime before that. So I think we're gonna try to catch I'm gonna try to catch the first P1 from Wilkinsburg into the city, and then walk to the start of the race. So
Okay. Just don't party too hard on Saturday night, I guess. But I'm sure you're acutely aware of that.
no beers for me on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the news. There wasn't a ton of it this past week. We did get a jersey drop tease from the Riveters, but nothing official. Their first game is in 2 weeks, so like they got to drop something here at some point. They also were pushing it all over social media that the Riveters have now been added to the Riverhounds mobile app. So if you already have the Riverhounds mobile app, it likely is already updated. Now it includes the Riveters as well. If you haven't, you can go download a single app that'll have all the information for both teams. I was a bit disappointed because I opened up the app and there's certain areas where you have to pick which team you want to look at, but there was just a common schedule. And I was like, oh, great. They like combined the Riverhounds and the Riveter schedule so you could see them all in one calendar. No, they haven't done that. So it's just showing the Riverhounds calendar, which is a bit of a bummer. But yeah, it is what it is. Um, Hercules Gomez was rocking a white Hounds kit while he was on ESPN the other day, so I guess that kind of counts as news. And I did get a chance to chat with Jacob Randolph in our pre-gaming episode, which dropped on Thursday. Always a good time talking to him. He's super chill. But yeah, otherwise nothing major coming out this week. What's going on your end? Anything there that I mentioned that you want to talk about, Justin?
No, I thought it was cool. I mean, the Hercules Gomez thing was pretty cool. Like, it's always fun to see the Hounds get some national notoriety, and who knows how many people watch ESPN FC, but it's fun that it's fun that it's out there. And then I think the Riveters being added to the app, that's fun too, just because we're 2 weeks away from opening day, and that's exciting. And we're excited. We're coming in this weekend for the marathon and watch the game, but we're going to come in the last week of May to catch the doubleheader that weekend. And so super stoked about that and getting to watch the Hounds and the Riveters and, get some good soccer in. So I think all that's exciting. I didn't get a chance to watch the Jacobs interview yet, so I'll have to do that before the game tonight.
Yeah, no worries. It's a quick watch or listen, depending on how you like to consume it. One thing before we get into talking about North Carolina specifically, we talked a lot about possession on the recap show, and you had mentioned that you might run some stats. How did that turn out? What did you find?
Yeah, it's always fun. It's always fun getting to do these because I'm like, oh, I can respond to anything on Sunday night show. Like that might trigger a thought for me, right? And so as you guys were talking about possessions and games that we win with less possession, games that we win with more possession, all of that, it triggered thoughts for me as like, I wonder how, like, yes, we have some field tool stats that, oh, if the Hounds don't have as much possession, maybe we win the game, and so I was like, I want to prove it or not prove it. I want to see, so did some quick digging today before the preview show to try to figure out, like, is this true or not? Here's the question I have for you, Mike. If over the last 2.5 seasons, so 2023, 2024, and the games we played so far in 2025, how many games would you guess we have won with more possession?
Oh, like three. Like I
The
don't think it's been a lot.
The answer is actually 2 games. We have won a grand
Oh,
total of 2 games with more possession over the last 2.5 seasons. So just looking through it, it's been interesting. So I went all the way back to 2022 actually. Figured 2020 and 2021 kind of flukes. 2018, 2019 too far in the past. So I was like, all right, let me just look at the last 3 seasons and then what we've played so far this season. Um 20 so grand total stats, right? With more than 50% of the possession. So, well, 50% or more. So, 50% or more of the possession over the last 3.5 seasons. We have won 9 games. 7 of those came in 2022. We have drawn 14 games and we've lost 20. So, we have gotten a result in 23 out of 43 games, something like that, in the last 2.5 seasons when we've had more of the possession. Now, looking at less of the possession, we have won 42 games with less possession. We have drawn 19 games, and we've lost only 12 with less possession. That's a crazy stat to me. That with less possession, we've gotten a result in 61 games out of 73.
that's
Like,
nuts.
that's wild to me. My As I was looking through this, the most fun part of this, the game against the Crew that we won at Highmark Stadium, we had 25% of the possession that game. 25%, and somehow we came out with a 1-0 result. So it's just really interesting. And then the other thing that I think is interesting about this, I looked at try to get a like, you kind of you get a lot of games that are like, at the 45 to 54% range. So it's like
Mhm.
what's happening on either end of the possession spectrum. So last season in the 8 games where we've had the most possession, can't list them out, but the 8 games that we had the most possession, we had 0 wins, 3 draws, 5 losses. In the 10 games that we had the most possession, we had 6 wins, 3 draws, 1 loss. And this is very similar across the board. 2023, 8 games with the most possessions, 0 wins, 5 draws, 3 losses. 10 games with the least possession, we had 6 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. 2022, 8 games with the most possessions, we had 2 wins, 1 draw, 5 losses. In the 10 games with the least possession, we have 5 wins, 4 draws, and 1 loss. So literally at the ends of the spectrum, we're better when we don't have the ball. I just found that really interesting. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what the next step is. So maybe my wife, with her statistical mind and brain, can try to figure out, okay, how do I make sense of those stats? And what's the next step in this experiment? But it is interesting to me that generally we have had better success when we have less of the ball.
Well, what's really interesting about that is you'd have to hope that maybe the Hounds have similar stats that they're looking at and they're trying to, plan against or whatever. But the fact that everybody was talking this offseason about the emphasis on retaining more possession, like that feels to me like a substantial shift in sort of a air quotes Bob Lilly philosophy, at least in terms of how we want to play. And like if you're just looking at historical numbers, if you're playing the same way, but your goal is just to have more possession, you're setting yourself up for failure. So you absolutely have to say, okay, we want to have more possession, but we have to actively change the way that we play and potentially
Mm-hmm.
with different players in order to expect a different result from what the past 2 to 3 years have shown us just based on a possession standpoint. So,
I
wow.
will say, so 2022 was a great season overall. And I think what was interesting about 2022 is it was probably pretty close to 50-50 of how I got these stats. I went to fbref.com where I get most of my stats. And literally, when you look at the season results, one of the things is possession. So I just sorted it on possession. So I didn't look officially to see how many games each season, all that kind of stuff. I didn't even look to see what the games were. So they could have been playoff games, they could have been Open Cup games, they could have been whatever. So I didn't really try to sort this too hard. But um it was interesting. 2022, we were about 50-50 on whether we had more or less possession, which sort of unless you're really trying to say we're a counterattacking team, we're gonna let you have the ball, we're gonna attack, counterattack, or you're like, nope, we want the ball, we want the ball at our feet, we're gonna try to possess the ball. Unless you do that, most of your seasons I feel like are gonna end up 50-50, or or the other look at that is if you're a Ipswich Town versus a Manchester City and you're just a better team, then you're going to have the ball more. But we were about 50-50, had a really good season, some good results, all that kind of stuff. The last two seasons have been heavily tilted into having less possession. The last two seasons, it's probably been more like 65% of the time we have less of the ball, 35% we have more of the ball. And so it's like I could see them being like, hey, let's possess the ball more to get back to what 2022 was, of like just normal playing, that some teams are better than you and they'll have more of the ball. Some teams are, some teams are less. And that's just the way it happens over the course of the season. But, but it's interesting because even this season, of the two wins that I saw as FB Ref sorted the stats, we had one of the games we won, we had less. One of the games we had 50% exactly. So that in my stats counted as more. But it's like, all right, we had 1-1 this season as far as winning games. But I think if we don't get to, I think the point is you got to have an identity, and you got to have like, I think our identity last year was mostly a counterattacking team. The problem is our attack failed for 8 games of the season, and we didn't score, But the year before, our counterattack was great, and we scored boatloads of goals. And so I think it's like, if you have the identity, we're a counterattacking team. That's what we do. Okay, cool. You can live off of that. But if you don't have that identity, and that's what I think potentially is the next step in this, is I don't know that Hounds have figured out their identity. I think probably with combining two conversations you guys had on Sunday, we have 500 midfielders on the field at any given time. We're going to have more possession. They're going to get the ball back. They're going to pass it around a little bit, all that kind of stuff. They're going to get more possession. It's then what do you do with that? And how do you get
Right.
from midfield having the possession to the final third and then convert those into chances? And that's what we have not been doing yet this season. And so I think some of it is just in the identity piece. You got to have an identity. You got to figure out the way you want to play, and you got to play that way.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. How much of this identity issue will we see start to resolve itself if and when you start to see Augie and Berton on the field together? Because it's clear that going into the offseason, we probably had an idea, or I should say through the offseason, we had an idea of what the formation, what the starting 11 could look like. And the second that you lose Berton, that's a huge piece that you're trying to replace. And so you're kind of trying to make do with what you have. Injuries are just part of the season. So like I'd like to see, hopefully, that we're actually trying to build an identity that's not structured around one player being there all of the time. You could say that about any player, right? You lose somebody like a Danny Griffin or a Sean Suber or whomever. Like, yes, you're going to have to pick up the pieces, and it may not be what you want it to be. But no, that's fascinating. Really, really interesting. Good work digging into that stuff, because I find it interesting. I know I talk about it a ton. And I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons why you might have less possession or you might have more possession. And there's plenty of valid reasons where you would be winning in a game and you're sort of sitting back. And the reason why the opposing team has more possession is because they're trying to pass it around the back and you're just not pressing them because you don't need to. And so possession is just sort of one piece of this whole like soup of what makes a good team. But it is fascinating that, especially over the past few years, seems to be a pretty consistent stat that correlates to whether or not you're getting a result or not for the Hounds. Yeah, interesting stuff. Um, let's talk about North Carolina. So North Carolina coming to Highmark Stadium this weekend, brand new turf. We've already played them once this season. It was the very first game of the season. It was a 1-1 draw. That was the game where we kind of got the fluky Augie goal, where it was kind of flicked up and the keeper came out, and Augie had to make a really good shot. He made the shot, it went in. They also scored when Beto had that fluky slip. And everyone at that point was like, who is this Beto guy? What's happening? Is he getting too hard on himself? Whatever. It was that game in North Carolina. Since then, they've been on a similar trajectory as us. They've had 3 losses in their last 3 games across all competitions. Statistically, we're basically the same team, aside from them scoring 2 more goals, and they've given up 2 more goals. Otherwise, we're both at a -1 goal differential. Um, Getting into sort of what we may actually see on the field, one thing we know for certain is that we will not have Luke Biasi in this one as he sits out this game due to the red card that he picked up 2 weeks ago. Um, Thoughts on what we potentially do up that right hand side without Luke there?
Um, what do you do there? I wouldn't surprised to see Broughton get a start there. See if that works. He played there a little bit, or played a little bit up one of the wings, in the Crew 2 game. So I could see that being a solution there. Um, I could see if Junior's able to start, I could see Perrin Barnes flipping over there too, and see what you get there. And so I think there's a couple ways to cover it. None of them are super ideal, but
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Charles All is officially out as well. Both Etu and Larson are listed as questionable. Ostensibly, everyone else is healthy, air quotes, healthy. We know that the team is sort of notorious for just not including players on the injury report. There might be a world in which we see Augie and Jockeson together in this game to start. Do you realistically expect that to happen?
um no. um yeah, it's interesting. My thoughts on this are kind of like what happens midweek then. And like now that we are, at our first 3-game week, like what do you do against NYCFC? And so you're obviously like want to have Augie on the field against NYCFC if he's healthy. And so I would kind of be surprised if either of them start this game,
Hmm.
depending how seriously Bob's taking the Open Cup. But I think like you got to like figure that out too. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them get minutes. I would, if both of them are truly still rehabbing, maybe not fully healthy, I would be surprised to see either of them start this game.
We spent some time talking about how we thought Randolph had a good game last week in Detroit. What do you do in net? Do you think that we stay with Randolph, or do you think that because that was sort of a cup competition that we just go right back to Dick in this one?
I think I think we should stick with him personally. And not because I think he's necessarily a better keeper than Dick, but I think in some ways you can ride the hot hand as a goalkeeper, and the guy who's playing well, keep giving him minutes. Unless he had a bad week at practice, we don't see that. So like, if he's still looking good in training, looking good on the field, all that kind of stuff, I'd give him another start. Or you start Dick this game and start Randolph against NYCFC. It doesn't really matter, but I think I don't think the same guy starts all 3 games next week.
Yeah. I mentioned brand new turf. Are you at all worried that that will be a factor in the game?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think so. I don't know what kind of factor it'll play. But I could see a lot of misplaced passes, things like that. Just ball bounces weird. They're trying to figure out the speed of it, all that kind of stuff. Playing into a guy's feet, you hit a ball, which you think you need to hit it, and it skips off the turf, and it's uncontrollable, by the guy who's receiving it. And so I could see a lot of that happening. And um, guys will adjust. You got to figure out how to play on the field that you're on. And I think
Yeah.
even going to Loudon the other week, like you think like, oh, this is going to be terrible, but you still have to figure out what is there, and how you need to play. So I think it's kind of the same thing here. It might be bad, it might be great. You just got to figure out how to play on it.
Yeah. It sounds like the guys were on the field yesterday for the first time doing a full practice there. So hopefully that's enough to adjust. It's going to be, at least in terms of playing surface, it's going to be similar as if you were just going anywhere else for an away game. It's just that, the stadium and everything else is going to be familiar and be home. So hopefully it's not going to be that big of a factor. But I'm sure a lot of eagle-eyed fans are going to be watching for any little slip or any little overweighted pass or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Justin, let's do a score prediction here, man. If we win, it's going to be our 300th win all time across all competitions. Do you think it happens in this one?
Yes. I'm gonna say yes this time. I do think we were in really good form last week. I thought we played a great game against Detroit. And I don't think North Carolina is as good of a team as Detroit is. And so I think if we play the same way or play with the same level of intensity, come out and try to find some goals early, use the Steel Army and the crowd and all of that as motivation and all that kind of stuff. I think we could find it. I think we could pretty easily find a result in this game. Score 1-0. I think we get a Lily special on the new turf.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say, I was gonna say 2-0, but then I was thinking back to all of the scoring issues that we've had. I'll say 1-0. I like the shout of a goal and then a shutout at the other end. I think back home, it feels like we played differently, and so we'll sort of see what happens in this one. That is what we think. Obviously, let us know what you think. The game is at Highmark tonight at 7 p.m. It's also going to be on ESPN Plus, KDK Plus, and 92.9 FM Radio Las Palmas. So if you want to listen to it in Spanish, more power to you. That is probably actually a lot of fun. If I wasn't able to watch it on TV, I probably actually would try to listen to it on that because it's just be a good time. It will be Mascot Mania for fans in attendance, so you'll get to see all of Ammo's friends at the match for whatever that's worth. Justin, any final thoughts before we get out of here on this one?
You sound so excited about the mascots being at this game.
Yeah. Yeah. If you see Justin, make sure you accost him and say hello as well, since he will be
Yeah,
there.
please do. Please do. No, it's gonna be a great night and a great game. And I'm super excited to actually be in the stadium.
Yeah. Agreed. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back with more Hounds and Riveters content for you very, very soon.